So on September 11th, I was in my last year of college, and I went to IU in Bloomington. And I remember that morning, I was laying in bed, and one of my roommates came in and said something like, they hit us or they got us, and I didn't know what he was talking about, and so I immediately got up and turned on the television, and that was shortly before the second tower was hit. And so classes were canceled that day on the Bloomington campus, and I remember a bunch of us gathered at a friend of mine's apartment, and the one thing I really remember, other than being concerned about friends we had who were working in that area and people we knew couldn't get through, the phone lines were completely down. One friend of ours' mother was, in hysterics because he worked across the street from the World Trade Center. But the thing I kind of remember the most was a feeling of we wanted to do something. We felt like we wanted to do something. We didn't know what, but we felt compelled to do something. And I think that's the same feeling that led some people to join the military and led other people, unfortunately, to target anyone who might have been of Middle Eastern origin, which was very unfortunate. We saw some of that on the campus down there. But it's a day I won't forget. It's very much, I think, our generation's Kennedy assassination. So I definitely remember where I was and what I was doing.
I was finishing up a sub at Bagster on the Tuesday, September 11th. I found out about, I would say, 9 o'clock that day. It was kind of a strange day. A few kids got pulled out by their parents. Everybody didn't eat where they normally ate in the lounge. They were all in the library watching the TV. We all watched the TV. I remember afterwards rushing home and just turning on the TV myself to see, of course after school. But it was a strange day, and it was actually quiet as they grounded all the airplanes in the sky. And it was, honestly, the weather that day was actually quite beautiful, and that rest of that week, which was actually good because people could get outside and not always see all the coverage, because all the coverage was kind of traumatic, to be honest. It was a day that I won't forget.
I was in my student teaching experience on September 11th when the towers fell, and I remember getting to work that morning, and one of my other student teachers that was working in the same building was like, "Did you hear what happened?" And we thought it was an accident at first, and then, still gives me shivers today. She came in and she said another plane hit the other tower, and it was so bizarre because all day parents were just pulling their kids from school. Nobody knew what to think. And then during lunch that day, we sat and we watched the news. And then on the way home, gas prices rocketed. It was that's when it hit me that it was really serious. It was sort of surreal up until that point, but it was scary because we live in a country that's supposed to be one of the mightiest powers in the world, and we were attacked on our own home soil. And that's my recollection of how that felt.
When the towers fell, I was on the West Coast living in California, so it happened really early in the morning, and it was very strange. Seemed a little bit removed. Watched the buildings fall in between trips to the office, and nobody really knew what was going on. We didn't know then what we know now. It seemed far away. It seemed tragic but strange. No one had seen anything like it.
No, I'm not. And she said, "Turn on the news." And so that's when I turned it on and learned what was happening and my son was in the Air Force, and it was a very scary time for me.
Okay.
All right, so on the morning of September 11, 2001, I was in second grade. So my memory of that day is a little foggy, but I remember the teacher turned on the news and we watched what happened, and it was very scary. So it's probably different for me because I was so little when it happened. I just have very vague memories of it.
Ready? Yeah. 3, 2, 1. Hello,
I'm Mr. Lee. 9/11 was a tragic day. I was upstairs on the 3rd floor, and I was on prep period, and I just happened to, at that time we had cable TV in our classroom, so I was listening to the news, grading some papers, and it came on that a plane had hit the World Trade Center, the first building. And so as I was watching and listening, then I actually saw the second one come in and hit the other tower. Went and told all the teachers up on the 3rd floor, and we're all social studies teachers, so we all switched on the TV. And that's pretty much all we did all day, was just watch the news and the horrific events that were going on. It's really weird. After school, I went to football practice, and we're so used to seeing airplanes flying in and out of Dayton. That day, there was absolutely no planes. It was just quiet and eerie. So it was kind of weird.
So that morning, I had just got off my 3rd shift job and was taking my kids to daycare. And we were watching the news when we seen the towers get hit.
9/11 was actually my first year teaching. I was teaching in San Antonio, Texas, and I taught 7th graders. And I was in a trailer across the parking lot from the rest of the school, and I didn't know about it until I brought my class over to the office for lunchtime, because that's the first time we got to see anybody else. And so it was a weird day because I just had to keep teaching my 7th graders like everything was normal. But obviously I knew that it wasn't normal. So it was a pretty scary day. I got home from work and all my roommates had been sent home from their jobs, but because I was teaching, I had to stay at mine.
I, on September 11th, 2001, was actually the athletic director at Richmond High School. I was in my office, and we had the television on because we usually had the TV on for the Weather Channel. And my secretary shouted at me and said, "Oh my gosh, you have got to come here." So what we saw, we were watching CNN. We saw the plane fly into the first tower. We were watching. We then saw the first tower collapse. It was one of the saddest and scariest moments that I've ever experienced. Word quickly got around the school as the second tower went down, and all events were canceled. As some of you may know, all air flights all over the country were grounded. There were no planes in the air, and we actually all left school early. As I said, everything was canceled. As I was leaving school about 4:30 that day, there was this huge boom. And what we found out later was it was actually the president that was flying back to Washington, D.C. But again, it was scary. We didn't know what was happening, and it was so sad. One of the things that I do remember afterwards was the patriotism that was just all over our country. People stopped and stood for the American flag, and anytime the national anthem was played, it was such a sad time, such a tragic time in our country, but again, it brought us all together as Americans, believing in the freedoms and everything that we enjoy and need to remember in this country. I hope that all of us will remember that day, and especially all the first responders who and the heroes. in not only New York City, but also on the airplane that crashed in Pennsylvania, where actually the passengers went into the cabin to stop the terrorist from flying this plane into what we thought was going to be Washington, D.C. So again, I urge you all to remember the heroism of those who lost their lives at 9/11, and to also remember, we hope we never have to repeat this again. Thank you.